Welcome to Mav Sports Take, episode 35, your unmuzzled sports talk here with Ryan Roberts and Mr. David Turner, 18-year scouting vet in the business across the NFL, Arena League, and CFL. Weekly podcast for sports, business, and a whole lot more. Here we tackle the business of all the news that you hear about and some that people don't want to talk about. Tonight, we welcome Mr. Steve Weish from the NFL Network, graduate of Howard University, host of Hustle and Flow podcast with Mr. Jim Trotter, and a member of the HBCU Hall of Fame Selection Committee. Second interview after we get Steve on will be with Executive Director of this weekend's first ever HBCU Combine, which is taking place in Birmingham, Alabama. That is with Mr. Philip Blackwell. Philip has served as National Director for the NFL Regional and Super Regional Combines, NFL Veteran Combines, and NFL International Combines since 2009. So sit back, get ready for a completely unmuzzled look into the history of HBCU football. We're going to be talking about some of the greatest players that have donned these esteemed universities, these college and these universities. We're talking about players like Jerry Rice at Mississippi Valley State. We're talking about guys like Walter Payton at Jackson State, David Deacon Jones at South Carolina State. Recent years, South Carolina State, Darius Leonard, Javon Hargrave. We're talking about Willie Lanier. We're talking Mel Blount. We're talking Willie Davis, Willie Brown, Art Shell. So many great players that we're going to kind of mention throughout the show to highlight the next wave in HBCU great football players. David, long intro to say, I'm excited for this, man. I can't even tell you the minute that this was presented to us, right? I did an HBCU kind of highlight seminar in the summer, and then I didn't even know at that point that it was so close to your heart, just highlighting these athletes from these esteemed universities. Excited to get talking about this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I worked with Willie Brown at the Raiders and got to, sit and hear his stories, old man Willie would always educate me on, the historic black colleges and the universities and their contributions, not only to their local communities, but across the nation and what they've done for this great country of ours. So much of their microphone has been muffled and muzzled. And so tonight here, as everybody knows, at Mavs, we're unmuzzled. We're bringing on the heavy hitters. We got Steve. We got Phil. We're going to be talking all about the heavy hitters that came out of there. We're talking about Hall of Famers, guys who with gold jackets have come from HBCUs. So a lot of the young players that are listening, if you think you got to go to a PWI, got to go to a Michigan State and Alabama in order to make it to the NFL and make it to the Hall of Fame, guess what? You don't. The pathway has been paved by a lot of men that have done this, taken these steps, and made it there themselves. So, tonight I'm just excited to have Steve on to really talk about in his rich history and knowing. And he's a member who sits on the HBCU Black Football Hall of Fame committee that selects all these young, these great players to the Hall of Fame, that they get their jackets from them, and he gets to sit and hear all their stories and review their cases to be greats. So I really am appreciative of Steve coming on and talking this about these great players, about this great opportunity. And this weekend, I'm just honored to be part of the first ever HBCU historic black college and university like football combine, to give them a platform that they can launch their careers off of and give them an opportunity to heighten their exposure. Whereas a lot of these colleges don't get all the NFL scouts there. This weekend, we're putting them through the grinder, and I'll be on there on site personally to verify all measurables, all times, and make sure that we are giving them a great workout to send the film to the NFL, CFL, XFL teams, and try to help somebody's young man's dream come true.
Absolutely. And if you see the banner behind us, we have some more of those names: Richard Dent, Larry Little, Aeneas Williams. So many great football players. Shout out to Dakota Follett for making us this sweet graphic behind us, just highlighting some of these all-time greats and then highlighting the next wave. So, of course, we're going to have Steve Weish on in just a couple minutes. Kind of want to just give some historical context for a second. We're talking about HBCU. I feel like a lot of people may be, I don't want to say ignorant, but maybe a little oblivious to what that means. What is the significance? Obviously, we're coming from a football scope, but these historically black colleges and universities, the institutions of higher education that were established before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 with the intention of primarily serving the African American community. Most of these institutions were founded in years after the American Civil War and are concentrated in the southern United States. During the period of segregation in the United States prior to the Civil Rights Act, the overwhelming majority of higher education institutions were predominantly white and completely disqualified or limited African American enrollment. So aside from the great football players that they have put out in recent years, we're talking about the history of education. We're talking about the opportunities that these schools have all presented to the African American, to the Black community. So without further ado, again, we're going to be bringing on Mr. Steve Wyche. Going to pop him on right now. Of course, you know him. He serves as a reporter for NFL Network, analyst, studio host, and senior writer for NFL.com. Steve, who joined NFL Media in 2008, contributes inside reports, analysis, and moderates panel discussions on NFL Network's signature show, NFL Total Access. He also files field reports at various team facilities and games on NFL Game Day, Morning, and NFL Now. Steve is a panelist on The Aftermath, which airs Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. He started the Hustle and Flow podcast with Jim Trotter this year, which is hugely successful already. We are honored to have him here tonight to join us, of course, a part of this selection committee that David has already mentioned. Steve, appreciate you hopping on with us. This is a great event, great ability to get this information out there, and we really appreciate you just taking a few minutes with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Real quick, it is Huddle and Flow. Let's not get into any copyright lawsuits. I don't want Skinny Black and, my guy, Anthony Anderson, all those guys coming after us for copyright. So the Huddle and Flow podcast. Hey, this is great. And David, this is awesome because you said, you got to sit there and listen to Willie Brown when you're in your days with Oakland. You weren't having a discussion with him because you were listening, because once he got all the oxygen going, he was eating all of it. You were listening. He was the most wonderful man. I love him. Rest his soul. But the stories he told and the space and the time he took telling them, it was, you got to bring a change of clothes by the time you finished, because he was going to take a minute, but they were all grand tales.
Absolutely. And, working at the Raiders, the greats walked the halls. The ghosts were there. And like Jackie Slater was on the staff, and, he was talking offensive line with me. And so many of these wonderful players would come back around and talk sports. But Willie was on the staff every year. Other guys would come and go, but Willie was always there. And he was always gracious to spend time with us and teach us young guys about the history of the game of football, but in specific, the history of HBCU football.
Mm-hmm. Well, Steve, I feel like we should start this conversation off. Obviously, you're sporting the Howard University shirt, right? So this is very near and dear to your heart. So can you take me just into the past, some of your early moments of HBCU football, and when this important this important part of your life kind of began?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in St. Louis, and as you guys mentioned, most HBCUs are east of the Mississippi, south of Philadelphia, right? So they're mainly the southern part of the country. So I went to University of Missouri and played football for a couple of years there, and that didn't work out. I had a coaching change. I wasn't very good. And so, a coach who had recruited me when he was at Wichita State was Willie Jeffries, right? Willie Jeffries was the first black head coach at a Division I program at Wichita State University. They shut it down in '84. Willie was now the coach at Howard University. So when I decided to transfer, I was like, okay, where do I want to go? Let me go to a black school. Let me look at them, because I've never lived around black people. I've never really had a black experience. I grew up well out in the suburbs of St. Louis. And so I wrote him. He's like, come on, I remember you. Come on, we need you at outside linebacker. Position's going to be thin, X, Y, and Z. By the time I got there, as David, as in football terms, I lost my stinger, right? I was done. I was someone who walked around naturally at 215, who lifted weights to beef up to 230. I was always having to keep it on. And I was like, look, I'm not going to the NFL. Let me get my grades going and start this journalism career here at Howard. And so while I'm there, I'd go to games and be like, man, I'd be an All-American, at this level. And there were guys, back then who were going to the NFL. Jimmy Johnson was a tight end at Howard, played a couple of years, 5-6 years in the NFL in Washington and Detroit and a couple of places. And you would see the talent. So you would see some individual talent, not necessarily collectively like you would see at PWIs. But, while I was there, that's when Doug Williams won the Super Bowl with the Washington football team and what that meant. Right? Here's a guy from Grambling who went through holy hell. He was a great quarterback who took the worst franchise in the NFL history, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to playoffs damn near every year he was, playing, and they wouldn't give him a contract extension because he was a black quarterback. And so he sat out and went to the USFL. His coach for the Oklahoma Outlaws, Woody Budenhofer, was the coach who took over University of Missouri when I was there. And so there's all this interconnectivity. And so through the years and then going to Howard and learning about, Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice coming from an HBCU, and then all the greats like Donnie Hathaway and Roberta Flack and Felicia Rashad and Debbie Allen, all the people who came out of Howard, and now seeing Kamala Harris and all of these fantastic people, come from my alma mater. It's just meant so much. But, I've always respected black college football. I mean, you think about those great Chiefs teams, that won championships in the AFL and early in the NFL. They would not have done so without players from black colleges. Al Davis and the Raiders, they mined black colleges, but no teams did it like the Cowboys and the Steelers, which is why it's wonderful that Bill Nunn, the former journalist turned scout, is finally going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year posthumously, but he deserved it because he's the one who got, Donnie Shell and Mel Blount and so many of those great players, Joe Gilliam for a while, who was starting quarterback, took Terry Bradshaw's spot for a hot second, went to Tennessee State. So just all of this interconnectivity. And now we're seeing kind of a renaissance in these black colleges with Deion Sanders going to coach at Jackson State and getting 3 and 4 and 5-star recruits coming down there. McCord Maker, the 5-star basketball player, going to play hoops for Howard. So, I really respect what a lot of these schools were able to do kind of piecemeal during COVID to get guys going to the Hbcu Combine and things like that this year. But it just means everything to me. See Darius Leonard, Tariq Cohen, Javon Hargrave, and Titus Howard and all these guys still doing their things because, as you mentioned, black colleges were founded because that was the only option. And now it's a choice. And we get the same education at HBCUs that you can get anywhere else, if not better. And we're proud of that. When we stand on the shoulders and we build on that by choice because we understand what we can do in this world with our alma maters, and our colors and the history that preceded us.
That's just awesome. Right. It's so fitting to give this show, the entire show, to the HBCU, history of football, because that's what we do. We're sports. We're, like Ryan said, our focus is sports, but the history of these colleges need to be celebrated. And I know one thing Willie always talked about, and a guy who's near and dear to my heart, Keon Johnson, who's a Grambling alum, always talk about being Grambling men and how Grambling men, matter certain ways. And it's kind of a badge of honor, right? That they went to Grambling and, it's awesome to see the pride. I don't have that pride in San Francisco State. It's just San Francisco State. That's where I went to school.
Well, you should, man. You got to rep your U, bro. That's why you're here, man.
I'm just go Gators, but still, it was more of a commuter school. You didn't live on campus. You just kind of went in and out, But, Ryan read off a ton of the HBCU grades that were not only huge contributors to the NFL, but they're Hall of Famers.
Pioneers.
Yeah, in your opinion, why have we seen a decrease in the HBCU players being drafted from the NFL over the last 20 years?
Well, it's simple because, again, think about when you're seeing the clusters. Guys like Emmett Thomas and Willie Lanier and Buck Buchanan, all these guys with the great Chiefs teams, right? Only place they could go to school were the Southerns and the Gramblings and the Tennessee States and Maryland Eastern Shore and schools like that. Now, the best players are going to Alabama and Texas and USC and Clemson and places like that. That's who people see on TV. When I was coming up, I was like, okay, I'm going to Missouri, I'm going to Notre Dame, I'm going to go to Kansas State, a place because that's all I saw on TV growing up in St. Louis. I never saw Grambling. I never saw Southern or Tennessee State or Howard or any of these schools on TV. So that's the first thing that hits. Then you have budgets at these HBCUs, right? You have coaches maybe getting paid $60,000, $70,000. That's not even half half of a month's of a shoe deal that what Nick Saban's getting from Alabama, right? So imagine his staff when they tell the coaches you got $350,000 to fill out a staff. Okay, what's my recruiting budget? That's got to come out of that. That's got to come out of that $350,000. So these guys can't get, if you're Delaware State or if you're Cheney up in Philadelphia, you're not going down to Florida, unless you've just got someone down there you can call and say, hey, send me some players. So right. I mean that's a significant part of it. So the overall talent, and then coaches, man, coaches move all the time. It's hard to get an Eddie Robinson who's a lifer, right? Or a John Merritt who's coaches at 2 schools, who's a Black College Football Hall of Famer. It's hard. Those guys aren't there anymore at most of these programs. So that's a really difficult thing. Even though you've got coaches in the PWIs who are floating all over the place, they take recruits with them. They've got the budget to say, hey, look, man, I'm getting ready to leave Oregon. I'm going to hop on over here to South Carolina, whatever. You want to come with me? Yeah, I got a starting role for you because they don't got a player at Oregon. You would have sat for 2 years. I'm gone. Well, I mean, it's just so there's so many things, because it's not just the athletic programs that don't have the budgets. It's the entire universities. Like I said, there is somewhat of a renaissance with HBCUs, with alumni giving back, and them really kind of watering that seed of the history and what you can do. But it's the first few raindrops in a long time of a drought. So you're going to get a handful again of great individual players, but collectively, just the overall talent is not going to be what it's going to be at a Georgia or Florida State or someplace like that.
I've shared with you and I've shared with Ryan and our listeners too. I'd love to get an HBCU channel, sports channel like the, Pac-12 and the Big Ten to help promote these, because one of the things is driving those programs with their budgets is TV revenue. Yep. And being able to get on TV. And obviously, I've talked with different companies, and one of them is entertaining an idea with me. And, hopefully we can launch that and get that to help drive more revenue into these schools and help bolster those budgets a little bit to where they can, again, they might not ever compete with Alabama, but, Southern Miss, watch out. They could be coming for you.
Well, look, but this is what's great about Deion, about Deion Sanders being at Jackson State, because Deion's got all of the shoe deals. He's got 3 decades of goodwill and clout with a lot of endorsement people. He's building a winner down there at Jackson State. He's getting players down there. So if he can get that, then maybe we can get, another popular head coach to come down. And we can start pulling that way, where all of a sudden you look at the sidelines, you're seeing Pro Football Hall of Famers on the side. Maybe Shannon Sharp wants to come coach, go back to Savannah State and coach one day. Deion didn't go to an HBCU, but he's down there coaching at one because this means something to him. And so that's why this is so important. And I really hope it works, because these are the ways, because, now you see Jackson State's games went from like a streaming ESPN platform to now they're being on ESPN too. Yep. So these are things that we've got. Right. So these are things we've got to continue to see and continue to do, and amplify the Celebration Bowl, which is basically a championship of the SWAC and the MEAC that's been on ABC. Right. And, the Bayou Classic, the Southern Grambling game that's played Thanksgiving every year in New Orleans. If you can get somebody to commit those types of dollars, that will help. That absolutely will help. Maybe we can get these guys on a last chance U, because that's one thing I see is with these last chance U, man. These JUCOs, one year they're in the middle of Mississippi with no money, and next year they're just loaded up with gear. They're freaking swagged out. They got all the money because these companies see what Netflix and being on that series can do to bring viewers to their product.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's why I think, honestly, a natural one is Disney, because they have Hulu, they have, the Disney plus ESPN and everybody else that, they can put a lot of platform and stuff on, and you can celebrate the culture of HBCUs with the big band competitions, step competitions, all sorts of things that also go within the culture of the HBCUs and promote it all. And there's a lot of ideas that I'm floating with them to see if, we can get them to stick and get them to roll with it.
You got to push the homecomings, man.
That's what Keon said too. And then but Keon said that too. He's all, man, it's all about the homecoming.
It's all about the homecoming. You have to push the homecoming, because that's when everybody comes back. Seriously, you walk across Howard Yard. I mean, Kamala Harris can't walk across the yard now, but you might see Felicia Rashad, or you might see Puffy, P. Diddy, who was at Howard when I first started. So that's what you have to push and get those people to say, hey, look, can you come on this Disney Plus thing, kind of hype up this homecoming? Yeah, let's do it. So you got to hit the homecomings, man, because that's what brings generations of love back, and that is a highlight, man. People don't care about the game. The game's a cherry on top. But you push those homecomings, man, because this is the best homecoming ever. So
I love how he keeps pulling it up.
Man, always. The envy is real. The envy is real. We can't win any football games, but we have the lick shot homecoming.
Well, Steve, I wanted to ask a little bit about heard about the launch of the HBCU Legends All-Star Ball, which is next February. Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a little glimpse into that and the hope for some of the athletes that'll be involved in that event? Yeah,
it's the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And what this is kind of, and it's good you're talking to the procurer and the director of the Hbcu Combine coming off of this, because in a way, this is going to be a bigger platform, because what we're going to do starting in 2022 is 100 draft eligible athletes. Think of the Senior Bowl, right, where they're going to have a week run-up of practice and then the game on Saturday. Okay, we have a broadcast partner in the NFL Network already on board. We're really racking up sponsors. Patrick Mahomes has made a significant donation over the next 3 years. And we've got Rydell has been the equipment sponsor. So we've got all of this great stuff. These players are going to be treated fantastically, but for a week. Right after the Super Bowl, NFL personnel people can go to New Orleans. We're going to do this at Tulane University. They can go to New Orleans and look at these players. Now, we're not going to have a combine, so to speak. But again, this is going to be the best of the HBCU guys and the draft eligible players rocking, going up against each other like you're seeing in the Senior Bowl. And this is where you see, David Moore, the guard out of Grambling, who's going to get drafted this year, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to see more players like him who's going to have a good week going up against some pretty good competition, but to show things that maybe some of these scouts didn't see. Because one thing about HBCUs, you might have a kid who's okay as a sophomore, but maybe he's a little doughy, or maybe he's just not fit. Well, as a junior, okay, he comes back and hits. Now you can give him the eye test, right? Because, David, you did this, right? There's not a lot of people who are going to hit the Prairie Views and the schools like this when they're scouting Rice and Houston and Baylor going through Texas, right? Hey, Prairie View's a little bit out of the way. I'll just get some film on a guy. Well, the film's great, but when you get the eye test on, that's big. So this is going to be a real big celebration, just to, again, think of that whole Senior Bowl thing. Now, we're not necessarily going to cover it all week on NFL Network like we do the Senior Bowl, but there will be reports all week where there will be, again, the history shown, the Doug Williams and James Harris's and guys like that to come in and talk. And it's also going to be a good thing for these coaches who might be trying to get into the pipeline, because we're going to have HBCU coaches coach this game, interact with some of these NFL evaluators, and get their names into the pipeline as well. So it's a whole well thought out strategic means of creating opportunities and not giving the NFL and its teams an excuse not to know about these people, because right now there's a lot of excuses being hung as to why maybe they don't know about this. This will give them no excuse, because you can't tell me that these evaluators aren't at least trying to get to New Orleans for a couple of days, for a couple of meals. And they're going to make an excuse. I'm going to this game, and I'm also going to go by Emerald's and grab a nice little etouffee while I'm there.
Hey, I'm going to let you know, if you want to combine at the front end of that week, if you want to combine at the front end of that week, you let me know. We'll pull it off. We'll put it together for you. We'll run them. We'll test them. We'll make them happy, because
perfect marriage. That's a perfect marriage.
We'll make it happen.
Makes too much sense.
I love the idea. Honestly, I would love the idea to do a combine at the beginning part of the week and then let them practice and play at the end. And now that, like you said, there's no excuses. We ran them, we tested them, we measured them. You could interview them all week. You could watch them practice all week in pads. You could watch them play in a game. What's your excuse? You didn't have an excuse, and it's in Tulane. It's in New Orleans. What else do you need? You got 6 days of vacation basically in New Orleans, and all you got to do is watch some football players.
Just come for one. Come for one or two.
Just come for one
or two. In between.
If that's all you believe it.
A couple of oysters in there, you're good.
That's right.
Now, with the HBCU Combine coming up this weekend, obviously last year the NFL wanted to do one and it got canceled because of COVID. down in Miami. Yeah, Miami.
Yep.
This weekend, we're doing it at UAB. They've been gracious enough to allow us on their campus, and we're going to be doing it at UAB. We invited the kids from last year's combine, all 50 of them. Some of them are in the NFL, so they couldn't make it. But we're getting about 34 of our participants of the 45 are from last year's class that got left behind. And then the rest of them are filling in from this year. We have 45 athletes that will be in attendance. We're really excited about last year's athletes attending because we're like, you know what? They did get left behind. They were planning on this combine. They've stayed in shape. They've stayed ready. But now we're bringing them into this situation, so they're not going to be that feeling is there. How do you feel about us doing a combine like this and the whole combine idea just for HBCU individuals?
I think it's great. I honestly think it's great because, again, we're talking about opportunity. So you had guys last year who did not have an opportunity to get into, as undrafted free agents even, into minicamps and OTAs and to get eyes on them because they didn't have them. Everything was virtual last year. So there could have been some kid at Tennessee State who was coming off of an injury, who didn't have a lot of tape, who was counting on that combine to go show you that this previous year's tape was legit and he's gained 15 pounds or something like that. He didn't get that opportunity. So I think the fact that you're doing this when it looks like we are going to have the potential of some on-field work in the offseason with these NFL teams, this is a way. And CFL, you talked about some of the other leagues. That's another way. That's another avenue. Whatever these kids can do. And I'm so glad these kids have not given up on their dreams and they're still trying to do this because it can be very discouraging just not to be able to get eyes on you or not be able to have that conversation. And there's so many guys with these teams with a reduced salary cap. They're looking for undrafted free agents, right? So this could be an opportunity to find that gunner, to find that long corner who can work as a gunner, who can work as something, and you can develop him because he fits Gus Bradley's scheme, right? Or he fits what Dan Quinn wants to do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Football has become so specific. It is not just about 40 times and vert. It is about, I need a long corner I can put on the open side of the field who, because I'm going to put him where I'm going to put my best pass rusher and I'm going to run games, he's going to be manned up. But he might not have to do anything crazy because they're going to get pressure on that quarterback in 2 seconds. He's just got to be able to stick with his dude when the ball comes his way, get his hands on it. Those are the types of people I'm hoping that they can find and at least get an opportunity who didn't get that shot last year. So I think this is a fantastic window for some people to come look through.
And I think the timing makes sense too, Steve, because you mentioned, we're obviously coming from an HBCU perspective, but like last year, even with so many kids in general that didn't get an opportunity with pro day cancellations, didn't get an all-star opportunity, like so many people, so many players are still sitting on the streets and trying to figure out what's the next step. And this is just presenting for me this weekend an opportunity for at least a population and an important population that we're trying to get more eyes in front of.
Well, and Ryan, here's the other part of it. And that's even more the guys who got a chance this year are just caught in this awful conundrum, right? Mm-hmm. So even when you guys were having this combine this weekend, there's still teams in the SWAC that are playing games. So you had a group of players this year because there was no fall ball pretty much in your black conference footballs. And then the MEAC, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Association, like Howard only played 2 games, both against Delaware State. A lot of teams did not even play a season. I don't think Bethune-Cookman played a season this year. I may be wrong, but I think some teams did. The SWAC is playing right now, but they don't finish until I think a week before the actual draft. So those kids who decided to play, their draft eligibility may start before anyone can really get a look on them or give them a call or actually get the proper measurement on them so that they may be stuck. They may be SOL. That's why David Moore, the guard out of Grambling, decided to skip his spring season and say, I'm going to go ahead and get ready for the NFL. And he goes, he has a great senior bowl. People you talk to say he's probably going to be drafted in 5th, 6th, or 7th round. He's a draftable player as a guard. So, this whole thing, the way it's impacted black colleges has been horrible. Because remember, they didn't have spring ball last year either. So that's another reason why this HBCU Combine is fantastic. A lot of these kids have gone well more than a calendar year having an opportunity to show themselves. So again, that's why I love the fact that this is being assembled, that you've got this many people, and that you're getting this film to these NFL teams because the NFL is not allowing team personnel to attend this in person for whatever reasons.
Yep, now that's a great point too. It's like we saw at the Senior Bowl. You mentioned David Moore. Even outside of HBCU, you talk about Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa. They had a rough first day. They hadn't played football in over a year. Just the context that people sometimes lose, and I couldn't agree more. Just with the full scope of everything, a guy like David Moore had to bet on himself because he was put behind the eight ball. Like what decision he's supposed to make, and this is a young man where at his age he probably shouldn't have to make that decision, but unfortunately that's the circumstances he was thrown into.
Yep.
What else do you think we can be doing to help support the HBCUs at this juncture, this Renaissance era, to heighten I guess it's just the hype, get them going more, stoke the fire. Yeah. Like what else can we do to help it out? I mean, obviously it's something I care about and I want to help, but I'm not sure I know everything, how to help. But in your eyes, what is it, some stuff we can do?
Well, it's funny because we all sit on the treetops, right? So we're looking at it here. What can we do to the NFL or to the general public to get them to pay attention? To me, it starts at the 7-on-7 leagues and in the high school leagues, right? Because a lot of these coaches have no idea. A lot of high school coaches have never heard of a Lincoln University, have never heard of Florida A&M. Seriously, they have no idea what those schools are. So if we can get some of these 7-on-7 programs to get the attention of some of these HBCUs and vice versa, right? If there can be a connection, hey, Florida A&M, can we stage a 7-on-7 summer competition on your campus? What about that? So now you're going to see 2 or 3 kids who could be 3-star kids say, I loved my time down in Tallahassee at Florida A&M. I'm going to go to school. That's how the recruiting starts. That's what making these coaches familiar. So instead of them necessarily sending kids who miss out on going to, an App State. So you know what? I don't have an App State, but I just got a call from the coach at Southern. They got 2 scholarships still open, and they're looking for a tackle and a flanker. And we know we got you two there. Why don't you give that a shot? You don't have to be a black student to go there. Hell, Ryan Stanley, the quarterback at Florida A&M, was the Black College Football Hall of Fame Offensive Player of the Year. I'm sorry, he was the MEAC Player of the Year in 2019. He's white, right? So you don't have to be whatever race. Just go there and get an opportunity to play football. And so I think if it's more at the grassroots level, David, if you can get these high school coaches to know that they have options at this level and that these options are good options, not just like, hey, settle for this. But like, hey, you might want to look right here because you can go right in and start. And this is the type of offense that you're gonna catch 55 passes for 1,000 yards every year. They're running an NFL type offense that you can transition to right away and be a star. These are things people don't talk. They talk about that stuff when it comes to Georgia and Alabama, but they don't talk about the stuff we're seeing on the field right now in the NFL. 3-man bunch, wide side, tight action here, or flex tight end over. That's the stuff that Willie Totten and Mississippi Valley State and Jerry Rice were running back in the day. They are sampling stuff from black colleges that are not getting credit. And, to hear Jerry Rice and some of these guys talk about what's happening this is where it's from. This is where the sausage started being made. And again, if we could start at the grassroots level to try to convince young people to go, the quality is going to go up, the TV deals are going to come, and you're going to see more people coming into the NFL. It's not always the end result we need to look at. We need to look at the beginning of potential solutions. And that starts with the recruits getting to these HBCUs.
You know what I just heard? Perfect storm. Because we did a show a couple months ago with recruiters from Illinois and Weber State, and they were saying how they don't have the scholarships this year and maybe next year to give away to these high school seniors because of this new, extra year of eligibility. Right. Well, maybe the HBCUs do. And if your young man is not getting the attention that you think they should, or even your young lady in softball is not getting the attention that you think she should, maybe you should be reaching out to HBCUs and saying, hey, I got a player for you. Do you have a spot for him? Because, he was on a watch list for Missouri, but Missouri's got off him because they said they don't have the scholarship for him. Guess what? Now here's a perfect storm with the opportunity, move right into HBCU country right now.
Yeah, but again, that's where maybe us, instead of the university, which don't have the budget, could say, we're here. Hey, we're putting guys in the NFL. We run a scheme that you ran in your high school that this kid flourished in. We're here. Don't forget about us.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. This is awesome. This is just I'm geeking out over here. My head's like, I got to call Nike and I got to get Nike combines there. I got to do this and that in HBCU. My brain's just like going a mile a minute on how, okay, you gave me some ideas. Let me see what I can do. Let me get it running.
Well, before David's head explodes, Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking some time. I'm going to give you a minute if you want to shout out Twitter handles, social media stuff, your podcast, whatever you kind of want to leave the listeners with. Would really appreciate it.
Yeah, my Twitter and IG handles are at Wyche, WYCHE 89, old jersey number. You can hit me there. You see, I'm always repping Black Odds Football Hall of Fame, signed by all my guys, Too Tall Jones, and all these great players. With everything that's coming up, we got the Black Odds Football Hall of Fame ceremony. Some great players like Coy Bacon and guys like that who are great in the NFL are going in. The Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's not forget about this, guys. We have several HBCU products going in from last year and this year, guys like Harold Carmichael and Donnie Shell, which is going to bring the total up to about 35, 36 players from HBCUs. That's 10% of the Pro Football Hall of Fame people who went to HBCUs. But let's also remember some of the great coaches. Again, John Merritt, Eddie Robinson, Jake Gaithers. These are the people who molded a lot of young men and made our societies creative. We're here. We're not going anywhere. So, again, all HBCU love. Everyone make your choices, but don't forget that we're here and we're making great people producing in society.
Fantastic. So, again, Mr. Steve Wyche, appreciate it, Steve, again, so much. This was, I could have you on for the next 3 hours if you wanted, but we want to be cognizant of your time. So, really appreciate you coming on.
My brothers, appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate you.
All right. So, again, Mr. Steve Wyche joining us, NFL Network's own Huddle and Flow podcast with Mr. Jim Trotter. You should go check it out if you haven't already. David, that was a fantastic conversation. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, you could pop on NFL Network anytime and listen to Steve talk. He's very well educated. He's a great speaker. He knows the game. Fantastic, though, to hear his perspective. I think that the greatest part was the beginning when he gave us a little glimpse into his first introduction to HBCU football and where kind of that love developed. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
And it's the love of the game that I think attracts us to it, but then the history of the game is what keeps us around. I know you're a huge Notre Dame fan, and the history of Notre Dame football is something that you attach to. You find a common, agreeable format to that. You know what I mean? There's just something about it that you're like, man, I love the history. And there's, again, down south, and when you go to Alabama, there's Alabama fans, there's Auburn fans, and that households are split. And it's on that game, wives and husbands are fighting, and they're against each other.
The Iron Bowl. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So, but in the HBCUs and talking to hearing Steve talk about Howard and being so proud about repping Howard, and even tonight he's wearing the shirt. And like I said, Willie would talk about Grambling and Keon and, Jackie Slater and all these greats talk about being part of these schools. It's more than the game that they played on the field. It's more than the brotherhood in that locker room. It's a culture around the campus. And then to hear him tie in homecoming and how we might not win football games, but we win homecoming. It's like it's so beautiful to hear people talk about their experiences. Every single person I've ever run into, to hear them talk about their experience at HBCUs, it's been a beautiful conversation with them. Yeah. And I've been envious of it because in high school I had it, because where I went to high school was a special place. But like I said, in college, it was like a commuter college. It was what it was. Went and got my degree and got out. I was looking at other things and trying to do other stuff in life. And have these conversations, it just brings back such a passion for a place. And it's amazing. And I really appreciate Steve's time tonight. Like you said, you and I, we could have geeked out with him for like 3-4 hours. We could have taken this into the wee hours of the night, poured some drinks and just kept it rolling. But hopefully we'll have him back on and we'll circle back with him after the event or after, the season's over for the SWAC and get his take on all that. And I really appreciate him being on tonight. It was very kind of him to donate his time for us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now that being said,
what was the transition? You sound like you were making a transition.
No, I was gonna say that being said. One thing that I will say this weekend coming up, we have a platform together. Like you heard Steve talk about next year, the Legends Bowl. They're going to have a bunch of former coaches and people come talk to the young men. Down here at the Hbcu Combine this weekend, we're going to have 3 presenters to them, myself being one of them, to talk to them about the interview process and how to train athletes that are aspiring for professional football, to kind of peel back the decision-making process into unveiling how the mind of the decision makers are. I mean, it's kind of why I created Maverick Sports Consulting back in 2015, was in order to help these young men understand what us decision makers are thinking. So when we ask a question, they understand the why behind it. And I'm very honored that Ulyss and the group asked me to present to the young men down there. Because, I have worked with guys like Odell Beckham Jr., Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Giovanni Bernard, so many more, and taught them these ways. So when they tackled the interview process in order to make sure they were first round picks, they were the first running back off the board, whatever the case may be, they didn't fumble the ball on the interview and cost themselves money, So again, if I'm very happy. And then the other presenters are going to talk to them a little bit about financial stability, how it works, and then go into a little bit more of life coaching. So we're putting a little abbreviated program. It won't be an all week. It'll be a night program for them, down there, so they can experience a little bit of what Steve and they're going to do, obviously, at the bowl game for all week.
Yeah, we obviously are looking very forward to that event. We have Mr. Phil Blackwell, who's going to be on with us in a few minutes. Before we do, I want to let you know, as David was just kind of alluding to, Maverick Sports Consulting was created in 2015 to train college athletes aspiring to make the leap to professional football. We peel back the decision-making process to unveil what's on the minds of the decision makers so they understand the why behind the question. As David said, he has worked with players like Odell Beckham Jr., Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Marcus Peter, Giovanni Bernard, and much more. If you're looking to win in the interview process, go to mavericksportsconsulting.com today and sign up. David, I will say this. One cool thing that I thought Steve said, and you alluded to it too, we have seen a resurgence, right? We have seen Deion Sanders take, obviously, the head coaching job at Jackson State. They got off to a really solid start. And it's really fun because he steals a 4-star cornerback out of the JUCO ranks, DeJuan Warren, who, would he have ever gone to Jackson State in the past? Obviously not, but he wants to be coached by Deion Sanders. He's got his quarterback, Jalen Jones, who is a Florida transfer. So getting players there, we got guys like David Moore from Grambling State in the class this year, Brian Mills from North Carolina Central. We got Mac McClain from North Carolina A&T who's in the class. So hopefully, now that we're getting some football players, again, we're having this resurgence, a great coach in the ranks with a big name and a big profile and a big reputation. Hopefully now that these young athletes, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed that a few players that I had conversation with that over the last couple of years that are from HBCU programs, I always ask them, when you were trying to make your college decision, why was an HBCU, why was it attractive to you? And a lot of the players, for me, are just kind of like, I didn't really know much about it, but like I appreciate it now. And I think that the more exposure we get, that appreciation, that higher level, the history of the game, the history of these football players, that's the next step for that resurgence. We need that. That's how the stay power is going to be, when more of a wider scope, a wider group of people get that appreciation for the game. And I think that's kind of the next step. I know we got Phil Backwell coming on in a second here. David, I kind of wanted to highlight a couple players kind of in and out here of the list of accepted invites for the event, because it's cool. Like you said, we got some 2020 guys in the list, not only just 2021. So one guy that I'm excited about seeing on the list is actually a running back from last year, Dewanyae Tucker, who is about 5'5", maybe on a good day, but my boy was fun to watch, to say the least. And he was a outstanding football player on the level. A really exciting one. I think another one, and I'll let you kind of take the mantle on this one, David. You got Deandre Francois, who has spent his last year at Hampton University, coming down for the event.
Yeah, we're excited about Deandre. I've seen him, compete in this off year a couple times, and he's a gifted quarterback and a gifted young man that is faced a lot of adversity. And now he's, entering into this process wholeheartedly and open, trying to answer all the questions to try to move his career on. Another one that Jimmy from Bethune-Cookman, the little running back out of Bethune-Cookman, is somebody that I'm excited to see, because I saw him at an all-star game last year, and man, he played on a different speed. He really was. He did a lot of things. I'm surprised an NFL team didn't scoop him up. But Jimmy Robinson is a guy he's a wide receiver running back that a lot of people didn't get a chance to see. And then without a rookie mini camp, which I'm sure he would have got an invite to last year, he couldn't go wow somebody. He couldn't get on the field and do something. And same thing with guys like Hunter Register. Hunter was a transfer.
Tall, dude. He's like 6'5". He's a big boy.
Yeah. He went to Minnesota, transferred down to Southern, finished his career there. He's like 6'5" wide receiver that, again, people just didn't get a chance to see at a rookie mini camp or at his pro day, see his measurables and be able to move forward and give him an opportunity to try out last year and come in and impress. So these are the kind of kids, and there's a lot. I mean, please go to the Hbcu Combine. You'll see the whole list of everybody who's going to be there. There's a lot of great young men coming. And it's a talented group. We worked with NFL teams. They gave us a list of players. They told us who they wanted to see. We worked our butts off with Phil and myself and Ulyss and Yogi and Alex. Everybody, got on these kids to get down there, take this opportunity and run with it. So, it was a recruiting effort and I give them credit. They're giving us their faith that they're going to come down and get an opportunity to, run in a combine and get their film to the NFL teams and CFL teams, and European teams even are going to get it, because we're trying to just give them an opportunity to earn a paycheck playing football. And that's what they really want. And the love of the game from these young men, we've had a couple onboarding calls, we call them, and talk to these kids about what to expect and, our COVID protocols and everything, so everybody knows what's going on. And, these great young kids they're smart. They meet the challenges head on so far. I'm really looking forward to flying in on Thursday and starting to meet these guys Friday face-to-face and getting to work them out on Saturday and again, set the stage for them to be successful. So it's awesome.
And one more guy I just want to mention real quickly, Donnie Corley, who actually started his career at Michigan State, ended up at Texas Southern. Very talented player. Actually made freshman All-American at Michigan State. Played both sides of the ball a little bit too during his Spartan career. Definitely another guy to keep an eye on. Now we want to bring on to the set with us Mr. Philip Blackwell, who has served as a national director for the NFL regional and super regional combines, NFL veteran combines, and NFL international combines since 2019. West Virginia alumnus, is also a former NFL journeyman along the lines with the Philadelphia Steelers, Washington Redskins at the time, and Carolina Panthers. He has been a player evaluator, drills coach, and director of combines for the NFL, CFL, AAF, and XFL. Philip, welcome you to the show. Appreciate you taking some time with us tonight. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm sorry about that. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're good. No
Whoa,
worries.
Phil and technology.
David can't say anything. David can't say anything about it.
I'm just saying, we got to take the training wheels off his computer.
Oh God, how y'all doing?
Not that he and I don't know each other at all. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
You look fantastic.
I'm trying to be like you when I grow up.
I love you. I love how you joined us in a well-lit room tonight. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes.
I can see there's a history here. There must be somewhat of a history here. I can feel it.
Just,
in the air.
just a little bit.
You could say that. Phil's part of the fam. He didn't forget the cannolis. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Well, Phil, I need to ask you off air the most embarrassing David Turner story of all time. But for now, David is kind of
weekend.
Right. Yeah, it might be this weekend. Might have to talk to you after the weekend, I guess. But talk to us, Phil, about this weekend, this event. David highlighted a little bit, but just a little bit of the overview of the event and what should players be expecting as far as drills and just kind of the format of the event.
Well, overview of the event, we're going to try to do our best to mimic a NFL combine to the NFL standards, to the NFL level, and we're going to get these guys an experience that they're going to remember. So when the guys get there, when they get to Alabama, they're going to check in just like if they were getting into Indianapolis. They're going to check in the hotel, and they're going to receive their gear. Mostly, we call it an identifying gear. It's going to be a shirt and stuff with a number on it that's already been pre-assigned to them, so that from that point on, we know exactly who we're, talking to or who we watch and walk down the hall. From that aspect, they're going to move on to a educational component. Well, really not move on to that. They're going to get their measurables done. They're going to get their height, their weight, their arm, their hand span, and their wingspan. And then we're going to take a nice body photo of them. From there, they're going to get some type of profile interview done. Then probably take a little 5 or 10 minute break, and then they're going to move on to one of the 3 educational components we're going to have. We're going to talk to them about financial literacy. We're going to talk to them about just life and having a life coach. And then we're going to talk to them from an NFL scout's perspective. From there, we'll give them a quick little break, and we'll go right on into dinner. Have a typical dinner. We have a recorded message from Stephen A. Smith himself.
Nice.
I just actually got off the phone with Stephen A. Smith probably about 15 minutes ago. That video is done, and I just saw it and heard him do it while I was driving, and it's Stephen A. Smith. He's going to set the tone for the guys. After dinner, during dinner, we have some few surprises for the guys and some awards. We've done some background checks on some of the guys and what they do in their communities, and we're going to give 2 guys a award for their community service. From there, we're going to get right into testing. We're going to go right to the UAB's facility and start with the bench press testing for the O-line, D-line, linebackers, fullbacks, and tight ends. We'll go to testing, and then after that, we'll call it the night. Then the next morning, we're going to start rocking and rolling with a nice buffet breakfast. And from there, each group are going to get shuttled to the facility, 1 position at a time. And they're going to go through an NFL-style combine. They're going to get stretched out by a guy that's going to stretch them out. Then from there, they're going to run the 40-yard dash and then position drills, and then do the other tests, which is the short shuttle, the pro agility, the vertical jump, and the broad jump. And then after that, they're
the layman's
done for the
term
weekend.
for pro agility is called L drill. For those of us that are not in the industry, talking industry talk.
Okay, L drill.
There's a 3 cone L drill.
Yes.
Excuse us for talking. We need to dummy it down for some of us.
I got you.
Scouting for dummies.
Yeah, so we're going to get that done, and that group will be done for the weekend. But what I like about it is once they land, however they're getting to Birmingham, it's all business. It's going to be all business from the time that they land until that last drill is done at the UAB facility. And then, it's the same thing as we do at the NFL regional combines. It's just all rocking and rolling business in and out.
Love it. That was very thorough, Phil. I was expecting a very quick overview, and you went in detail. Can you tell me what's on the menu? I want to hear everything.
Oh, food.
Food.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know that much, but I do know some more interviews are coming with different media agencies are doing interviews with some of the players. And I'm just really excited because of how much stir this event has brought about. It's brought about a lot of stir, and I'm happy that it's been all positive, and the players are excited, and even one of the guys that I reached out to personally to um, extend the invite, he broke down in tears. So
Wow.
that was really really cool. To just bring some joy to a guy, and for him to break down in tears, and then afterwards when he got himself together, I asked him like, why, and he's like, he's a 2020 guy, and he thought his opportunity was over. So that was really cool.
Why did the committee? I know the answer, but I want the audience to hear the answer. Why did the committee choose to include the 2020 guys?
The committee chose to choose the 2020 guys because they did not get a shot last year. And since the NFL had already invited them, we know that they have sparked some NFL interest. So we invited those 50, plus we were going to invite another 50 more from this current season, which all the HBCUs were scheduled at the time we were doing the planning. They were scheduled to be playing during all of this. But then since then, some leagues have dropped, and some programs have said they wouldn't play in the first place. So we just wanted to give everybody a chance. And also, if the guys didn't get a chance this season, that'd have been 2 years behind, that they didn't get a shot.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we just talked with Steve Weiss when we were talking about the impact, right? Like all those guys last year in 2020. Now you're kind of talking about like no pro days. If they weren't at an all-star event, if they didn't have a combine invite, like they just didn't have opportunity. It's a resume builder. So I think it's great that you have extended that opportunity, obviously, to last year's class as well. And so I would like to kind of ask, for you, I can hear how important this is to you. And obviously, the impact that you're having on young men is fantastic with the story you shared about a player breaking down, just getting the opportunity. For you, why is this event, why is this cause so important?
Well, it's so important because we already know that these HBCU guys, they don't have the same opportunities everybody else have. So therefore, we would like to just try to level the playing field, but more of an exposure. Let's give these guys that are good. I mean, we just didn't invite anybody. We invited guys that already had some type of NFL interest. So therefore, we wanted these guys to just stand out and now put them on a center stage. And I think that's where COVID is actually helping us out, because not only there's nothing else going on, these teams get to see and hear that this is what's going on just for HBCU guys. So now gathering them in one location, getting the teams to get the films of everything, it's a great opportunity for everybody across the board.
Now, let me ask you this one, Steve. Steve.
He's stuck in the past.
I know. I'm stuck. I still have a glow about me. Steve Weiss was around. I was like, oh. Tell us, how do you feel this will elevate the exposure for the players? Not just that we're trying to, but what's the reasoning for you? And I know how you've attacked this. That's why I'm asking this question. How do you feel this is going to elevate?
I think it's going to elevate the exposure to that HBCU players or HBCU schools even have. They have the players that can possibly play on the next level. So to just stop overlooking them, give them more of a chance. I think it's going to bring more of a light, along with what we've seen with Deion Sanders now coaching there. Just bring more of a light to HBCUs and their level of play. Because traditionally, for over years, they've been just looked down upon. And right now, we just want to show the world that there's no reason to look down upon them. You can sort through HBCU schools just like you would sort through an Ohio State or Penn State. Everybody there doesn't go pro. So why not give the HBCU guys a chance to just get looked at?
Yep.
What are some of the sponsors that have jumped on board to help this get pulled off?
Well, namely, Gatorade has jumped on. Gatorade is going to give each player the exact same thing they give the players at the Indianapolis Combine. That has already been shipped out and will be there. Gatorade has jumped on. It's a good question you asked me that. PNC Bank.
Wow.
UAB has jumped on to be a sponsor, and UAB Health Department. God, I'm glad you asked that question, but I'm trying to run down the list.
And also, East Bay has been.
Yeah, you're right. East Bay and Foot Locker is jumped on. And I got a hint today that Delta Airlines is one of the people that would like to join in with this, and ESPN Radio has reached out to me and said that they would like to partake in part of this too.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I mean, just judging by that, it must be outstanding. I would love to hear your perspective just to see the growth of this event. And obviously you spoke to the importance of just the significance of getting those players out in the forefront, getting HBCU out in the forefront, but then also to see the growth so quickly and so many great sponsors and everything. It must be fantastic to kind of see the growth.
Yes, I like that. Since we brought this up, I think that it's uncovered some hidden issues that people have wanted to bring out. Some people might have wanted to support HBCUs, such as Coach Clark, the head coach at UAB, just asking him in 3 sentences. He's like, yes, I want to do that. I want this at my university. I want it here. And then he went to the mayor, and the mayor said, yes, it got to be here. Those things have been really great because it's like, oh, well, HBCUs have more support than they even realize. And There hasn't been anyone to turn us away because we said HBCU. Everyone has said yes right away. I mean, the only thing that has slowed us down with anything was COVID and COVID protocols. But other than that, I mean, people's asking us yes. So UAB came out the box and said, hey, let's do this for a couple of years. And I was like, wow, like this is really good. Just knowing that since I did not attend a HBCU, I've only known about historical stuff, and a lot of historical stuff is historical trauma. So now that I'm experiencing the exact opposite of it with dealing with HBCUs, it's been nothing but positivity the whole time.
Well, that's fantastic. And it's fantastic to know that this event's going to continue to grow in the future. That's just so refreshing to hear, just the pulse of HBCU, and great news continuing tonight. Phil, I really want to thank you so much for taking some time. This was awesome. First time getting to meet you, get a little bit of your background, get a little bit of the background of the event. Would love you to take a second here. If you want to shout out anybody, you want to leave, where people can find the event, where people can find you, anything at all.
Well, I just want to shout out any and everybody that has any interest in HBCUs. Where I appreciate that type of support. But feel free to log on to HBCU Combine.com. Follow the updated results of the players this upcoming weekend. Those results will be starting to be updated as early as 9 p.m. Friday night. That's 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Friday night, because that's what we've been doing the bench press. And tell everybody follow us all evening long and all day long on Saturday.
Absolutely. So you need to get ready for a great event. Philip Blackwell again, obviously, bringing us some great news. It's a happy Tuesday night here at Mavs Sports Take. Phil, we appreciate you again. We have to have you on after the event. We have to have you on in the coming months. We have to have you on before the next year's event. Keep this train rolling. I love it, man.
Only if we get to tell a Dave story live.
Yes.
Don't get ready. Be ready. Don't get ready. Be ready.
That's right. Hey, thanks for having me.
That'll be the next one. The next one, Phil. We'll leave the HBCU talk for maybe two talks from now, right? The next one is a David Turner exclusive. Nothing but bad news.
Oh, I think the Rona just hit me. I'm not gonna be around for that one.
Thanks again, guys, for having me.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate you coming on, buddy. I'll see you this weekend.
All right. Everybody have a great one. Be safe out there.
All right, so again, Mr. Philip Blackwell. David, that was a lot of fun. I could tell that you guys have a nice history. I want to hear some of these stories. I really do. I can't wait to hear some of these stories now that I know Phil. Now we, get the inside dirt on you. I can't wait for it.
Oh, you don't have to dig too deep to find it on me. It's pretty out on the surface, but no, Phil's a great guy. I've worked with him for a while, and again, he's a class act. And the thing people don't realize about Phil, well, there's a couple of things, but he's been running combines for on-street free agents, trying to help young men get their combine, credibilities, numbers, and validated and everything for years now, since 2009, like you said in his intro. And he's also helped XFL and CFL run combines. And so his heart's really big about just helping players get to the next step and get their careers going and get them where they want to be. So it's exciting to be working with Phil and Ulyss and Yogi and everybody that we are, Andrea and Keon and everybody that's going to be there this weekend, for the whole staff, the back end that's getting it done and making sure we're keeping the players safe. That's why we're doing one group at a time on the field and making sure that we don't overload or overdo it. We've worked really hard to curtail it down. And if the NFL's listening, I doubt they are, but if they are, this is something we could do for you all the time if you like.
Well, the NFL's not listening? I doubt that. Who wouldn't tune in to Mav Sports Take? We here at Maverick Sports Consulting would like to ask you to follow, subscribe, and take the chance to interact with us on our Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and other social media platforms. We are a company that is all about helping maximize your opportunities in front of you and your career. The only way we can support you is if we hear from you. Your takeaway from tonight's show should be that if you interact with us, we will find a way to help you in your career path. Reach out and we could do a Mavs episode on your topic of choice, or we could circle back with you to help you with some individual attention. Don't wait. Reach out today at Mav_sports on all social media platforms. I love it, David. Every week I look up and I'm like, we're doing great on time, and now we're over an hour. So want to kind of end this on a positive note. Of course, shout out to Mr. Steve Weish. Shout out to Phil Blackwell. It was fantastic. And again, the history, not just of football, but the importance of the historically Black colleges and universities. Some of the ones that I mentioned: Mississippi Valley State, Jackson State, Grambling, Southern, Savannah State. So many great ones that not only live in infamy because of some of these great football players that we talked about, the Willie Davises, the Willie Browns, the Art Shells, but the importance of why they became to relevance, why people were going to these colleges, why they had to go to these colleges, and understanding the long-term impact. That is the main takeaway for me. David Turner, of course, with your event coming up this week that you're obviously a part of, we wanted to shout it out one last time. I want to give you the floor to end out this great HBCU exclusive podcast.
Well, I want to thank you, because you did a lot of work for this show tonight, and you brought a lot of the historical stuff to it. And you know what? I appreciate you, because again, over the summer, you did an HBCU panel. At the time, I didn't know you cared about HBCUs as much as I did. And then we found this passion for this historic nature of again, why they came to be, where they're located and all that stuff. And then through football, we educated ourselves about these institutions and the higher learning institutions. And again, I just thank you every week, because, doing the show with you is a pleasure. We go back and forth, we have fun, but the shows like tonight, where we get to educate our fans, educate our listeners, and take an opportunity to show them that there's more to football than you realize. And, a lot of these young men they didn't initially have a place to play. Now they have a choice to play there. And I hope a lot of young men explore the choice. Like Steve said, you don't have to be Black to go to these colleges. They were set up that way, but you can be any creed or color going down there, any race. It doesn't matter. It's just about playing football and getting a really quality education and graduating with your degree and accomplishing what you want to do. And like Phil said, we're trying to do this combine every year. So therefore, you'll have your own platform. If you go to an HBCU and you perform well, we will find you and we will put you in this spot to perform. And we are working with the NFL to have scouts there next year and in future years. But in any year about it, we're always going to have the film to them. We're always going to get the verified measurables to them, so that you don't have to worry about maybe someone not attending your college pro day. We will make sure they get to these decision makers as best we can.
Yeah, and Steve did highlight, of course, Ryan Stanley, quarterback out of Florida A&M, was the conference player of the year in one of the conferences on the HBCU level last year. So yes, not just a black thing, right? Like, this is not just for black people to celebrate. This is for everyone to celebrate, because this is history. This is important. We need to preserve it, and we need to resurrect it. We need to keep it going. We need to take it to the next level. We need to give these people, these young men, opportunities. So shout out to everybody. Again, Mr. Steve Weish, Mr. Full Blackwell, Mr. David Turner, of course, who is my great co-host, who I cannot even explain the pleasure that I have to talk football with you every week. Shout out to everybody that stuck with us for this episode. This is Mavs Sports Take, episode 35, the HBCU Combine exclusive. We thank you all. We'll be back again next week, 8:30 Eastern time on Tuesday night on the NFL Draft Bible live stream. Make sure that you go to any podcast platform, drop us a 5-star review, give us a nice review. Tell him Ryan Roberts is a handsome man. Tell him David Turner is very astute in his opinion. Would love
Ryan will send a check to you as soon as you do that. He'll send the check.
Ryan doesn't have any money. Ryan has a newborn. He doesn't have any money. But we would have really appreciated it so much. Like, share, subscribe, do everything on any podcast platform that you use, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. See you guys again. Same time, same place next